CNN anchor and correspondent Jake Tapper is known for uncovering the truth in his no-nonsense interviews. But now Tapper is turning his attention away from learning the truth to writing fiction. His new book, called The Hellfire Club, is a political thriller set in the 1950s. It takes place in Washington when the Red Scare and McCarthyism ruled the city. Jake, thanks so much for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Tanya. Thanks for having me.
You've already written several nonfiction books.
Yeah.
Why did you want to turn your attention to fiction this time?
Well, first of all, it was fun. I mean, it's fun to write fiction. I wanted to tell a fun story for readers that they could just throw themselves into. It was a great relief from my day-to-day job of telling the story of what's going on in this crazy world for real. But then also it was just part of living in Washington, learning about things that had taken place in the 1950s, coming up with some opinions and ideas about the swamp and about political dynamics, and telling them in a way that was more about my feelings about them than about the facts.
And why did you choose the 1950s? Do you see parallels between the 50s and today, or were there other reasons that that era intrigued you?
Well, both, actually. I mean, first of all, I think the 1950s are an incredible time in American pop culture because they're kind of ignored because they're between World War II and the 60s, so they don't get as much attention. But they're this time, we think of them as serene and benign, but they're really a time of menace. We have McCarthyism, the Red Scare, communists actually infiltrating the government. It's before African Americans had rights, before women had rights. So it was a rich time to write about. And then in terms of parallels,
it was only idyllic on TV.
Exactly, exactly, like in Pleasantville, like the movie Pleasantville. And then the other thing is I did see a lot of parallels. That, they say history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And when researching the book, there's a lot of rhyming. Whether me writing about the swamp of Washington, or writing about Joe McCarthy and his smearing and lies, and the fact that the political and media culture was kind of paralyzed and didn't really know how to react to it.
So Joe McCarthy, obviously a towering figure in the 50s, a towering figure in your book. Are you drawing any parallels between Joe McCarthy and a specific political figure today?
Well, I mean, I'm not the first one to note that there are similarities between President Trump and Joe McCarthy. Obviously, they're very different, and obviously McCarthyism and Trumpism are not the same thing at all. But it's just empirically true that both men use the technique of smear and innuendo and lying to achieve what they thought were noble purposes. And it's also empirically true that the Republican establishment during McCarthy's time didn't really know how to react, and they didn't really know how to deal with him. The same with the media, the same with Democrats. And we see a lot of that today with President Trump. A lot of people who want to support President Trump but are very troubled by the smears and the lies that he engages in.
And so do you see a lack of response to that in the same way in the 50s there was confusion over how to respond to Joe McCarthy? It was so unprecedented. Do you see a lack of response today?
Yeah, I mean, I would read about that period when doing research for the novel, and you would see things said by, for instance, the Senate Majority Leader, Robert Taft, a Republican from Ohio, and he would say to reporters during the rise of McCarthy, why are you even covering him? Why do you cover him? Which reminded me so much of what I would hear from, people who work for Jeb Bush or John Kasich. Why are you covering Donald Trump during his presidential rise? And then also just this, people paralyzed. They didn't know how to deal with this. They didn't want to make McCarthy's base angry. They didn't want to become subjects to McCarthy's smears and lies themselves, and yet they were troubled. There were people that stood up at the time. There was a very heroic Republican senator who's in the book, Senator Margaret Chase Smith, who in 1950 went to the Senate floor, gave her declaration of conscience about what she saw as unacceptable. But for the most part, the media, Democrats, Republicans didn't know what to do. And at the end of the day, even though McCarthy was censured by the Senate, even though Edward R. Murrow and others did ultimately go after him, it's not a very proud chapter for Washington, D.C.
Absolutely. I want to talk about your main character for a moment, Charlie Marden. He is a World War II veteran. Today we saw Trump's pick to lead the Veteran Affairs Department rescind his nomination. So how do you think that reflects on the Trump administration? I mean, it does appear that his pick for Secretary of State will get through.
It reflects fairly poorly. I mean, the truth of the matter is, this is what the peril of governing by gut. President Trump picks somebody who he personally likes, Admiral Ronnie Jackson, who doesn't have the experience to run the second largest bureaucracy in this country, the Veterans Affairs Department. He likes him. They don't do any vetting. They don't communicate with Capitol Hill about who he is, why he's qualified. They don't do the homework to make sure that there aren't any skeletons that he needs to at least explain and have answers for, much less perhaps even pull his nomination. And ultimately what ends up is a disaster for President Trump, a disaster for Admiral Jackson. He's saying that the charges against him are false and fabricated. Okay, I mean, I don't know what the truth is. There's 23 people saying negative things about him, but that's the kind of thing that an establishment would have homework, would have vetting, they would have all that in process. I understand why people out there, including President Trump, are skeptical of the establishment, but sometimes the establishment knows what they're doing, such as homework, such as vetting, such as preparing nominees to be vetted and presented to Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
And the fact is they didn't do that for him, and that hurts President Trump.
Absolutely. All right, I want to get to the title of your book, The Hellfire Club. That refers to a secret society, correct? There's a
real one.
A real one. So that's what I wanted to ask you about. There's a lot of cloak and dagger, secret societies, conspiracy theories. Do you believe that all of that goes on, or does that just make good fiction?
Well, both. I mean, the Hellfire Club in real life was in England in the 18th century. It was really debaucherous, too much so for your audience, what they did. But it was the elite of the British society. Benjamin Franklin went, and they really did disgusting things. It was also basically a group where like-minded businessmen could get together and develop alliances. Now, I took that club and I put it in the United States in the 20th century. I don't know that it exists. I made that up. But do I think that there are societies I don't know about, that you don't know about, that that those alliances help run things? Of course. Don't you?
Well, I don't know, but you're the investigative reporter. Maybe the next book should be about those real
But this
societies.
is fiction. This is fiction. I don't have any evidence that they exist, but it's hard to imagine that there aren't alliances that we don't know about for all sorts of reasons. But you know, like I said, this is a work of fiction. I'm sticking with that.
Absolutely. Well, Jake Tapper, thank you so much for coming to see us today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
And coming up in our next hour, Ronnie Jackson withdrew